go. And kill. Awesome. How's everybody doing?
Good. Another exciting day. Evening.
Yeah, we're in the home stretch.
We're home.
Yeah.
Yes.
Always a certain little bit of relief every day when I get home. I'm just like, oh, we did it. You know, I don't, it sounds so silly, but like back in the day, it was just like, did the work get done? That was my big concern. And now I'm just like, all right, are we home? Are we safe? Are we healthy? All right. Good day has been a success.
Sabrina's doing very well. She's double fisting.
Yes. And I got Kitty Cat here too.
All right.
Let's see if I can get him in the shot. There we go.
All right.
Yep,
So
2 glasses of wine and 1 giant cat. Yes.
So we got some aged Riesling here. Kind of talk about, the idea tonight was just talk about, you know, ageability in whites, and what happens when white wines grow up. So we have a 2019 Riesling, which is just a year old, that's made to be really fresh, bright, aromatic. And then the 2014 Riesling was one that I made, and it was on accident. We didn't want it to exist, but I'll walk you through the story because it's moderately amusing. So I went to go pick up our Chardonnay at Cockburn Ranch, and now Cockburn Ranch Vineyard is a vineyard that we've picked from before. It's, you know, foot of the Blue Mountains. We talk about that regularly, and it's run by a guy named Cecil Zerba. And Cecil Zerba kind of looks like Yosemite Sam from Looney Tunes, and he's like rootin' tootin', and he's always really kind of angry about something. And in the dictionary next to the definition of curmudgeon is a picture of Cecil Zerba. So anyway, he's a bit of a grumpy old Gus, and I think he'd probably agree if I had him on the Zoom call right now. So anyway, I go to pick up our Chardonnay, and I'm there with the winemaker from Sokol Blosser, who's getting some Chardonnay from that vineyard too, because they're down in Oregon. So a lot of Oregon wineries source from Walla Walla, the Walla Walla Valley, because in bad years, we always get the fruit ripe. So a lot of Pinot Noir that's grown here goes to the Willamette, and same with Chardonnay and things like that, because we can get a riper style here that can blend into their more difficult years. Anyway, I go to pick up my Chardonnay, and the Chardonnay comes out of the vineyard. I look at the guy from Sokol Blosser. He looks at me, and I go, that doesn't look like any Chardonnay I've ever harvested. And so sure as heck, Cecil's crew went to the wrong rows and picked Riesling. So picked a ton of Riesling on accident, and he didn't know what to do with it. So he just gave it to us. He's like, I got no use for it, you know, so he sent it to us. So we brought that ton down. And then in 2014, we had also agreed to take a little bit of Riesling from Lake Helene Vineyard because I wanted to see what that was like. That's not there anymore. So we got their ton from Lake Helene. Well, that was also the first year. This was also the first year that Leonetti donated Riesling to us. So we kept getting Riesling donated to us like a freight train, and I didn't know what to do with it. So we've got 3 vineyards of Riesling, all from different places, but they're all from Walla Walla Valley. So this is Leonetti Luss Vineyard, which is, you know, basically right down by my house, which is by the high school. Then the next location is is Lake Helene Vineyard, which is just a little further south, just right on the state line of Washington and Oregon, and up against the foothills of Blues. And then Cockburn Ranch, which is down in Oregon. So all along the kind of foothills of the Blues. And so when we got this in, we made wine out of it. We didn't really know what we were gonna do with it. I just started making wine out of it. And in the process, the acids were really high, really bright, really vibrant. 2014 was a really warm vintage, much warmer than this year. And the Leonetti, since the Cockburn Ranch was picked really early and the Leonetti vineyard never gets particularly ripe, the acids were super high. So I decided to make a wine that would haul. And so the idea was to make a wine that would age. And our goal when we did it was actually to release it after it was 5 years old, which was supposed to be 2019, but we haven't got to that yet. So we wanted to do an aged Riesling. So This wine is about 10% alcohol, which is pretty low. It's got quite a bit of acid, and I have to call up Sabrina's slides here. But the acids is pretty high. But what I think is kind of fun about it is that the acid is also quite high. So I've got some slides here I want to walk you through, and we'll talk about these two different wines from a chemistry standpoint. But one of the things that you're going to note, I think most substantially between these two wines, is the aromatic profile. So the 2019 is probably the newer one's really fresh, really vibrant, very floral. And that's because it's got a little bit of muscat in it on the nose. And then we used a little bit of muscat juice on it, just a tiny bit to finish it. And then the 2014 should smell like diesel. And the diesel comes from the degradation of carotenoid precursors, and it turns into a compound called 1,1,6-tetraethyl trihydronaphthalene. There will be a quiz on that later. No, there won't be. Anyway, the carotenoids, the orange color, breaks down in ethanol and acid, it hydrolyzes into this compound that smells like diesel. And depending on who you are, the real Riesling heads love this old diesel-y smell that comes with it. And we get a lot of this in Washington Riesling. It's a real hallmark of Washington Riesling. And the reason for that is carotenoids come from sun exposure, and we grow Riesling in a fairly hot climate. And so in Germany, they'll talk about the botrytis diesel seesaw, because in bad years, they have a lot of botrytis, which is the moldy compound that makes it really honeyed. So in moldy years, they get this really kind of honeyed note to it. But then in hot years, they get the diesel year. So you can tell in Germany whether they had a hot year or a cool year based on how much either kind of honey or diesel they get. In Washington, we rarely get the honey. We get more of the diesel because we just don't have the conditions for growing botrytis particularly well here. We're too dry. So we always get this diesel. So an aged, you can pick out an aged Washington Riesling, or like Clare Valley in Australia. That's another dead giveaway, is diesel. I think they show up really substantially compared to our German counterparts. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and we'll kind of walk through these on a one by one notion. Actually, I want to start out here with acid. Let's see if I can, there we go. So I think the most substantial difference between these two wines, aside from sugar, is I want to start with acid. Notice how much more acid we have in the 2014 versus the 2019. And we also have some other global examples here of where acids sort of fit. And I wouldn't mind it, Sabrina, you're welcome to chime in on this too, because you know some of these wines better than I do. But we have the Eden Valley on the far left, which is Australia. Where's the Camptal from, Sabrina?
Hi there. Yeah. So if the Cabernet group is on the line here, a lot of these are your wines that you threw in to taste for some dry Riesling inspiration. So the Eden Valley one, that's South Australia. The Loimer there, it's a little older. That is Austria. It's from a region called Camptal. And then we have an Alsace here from Western France. And I threw the Columbia Valley Long Shadow's Poet's Leap in here as a nice standard, because that's one of the hallmark Washington Rieslings. And then I threw another couple in there because they actually had some similarities. So not necessarily in the acidity, but this Pfalz wine, which is from the border of Germany and France, actually has very similar sugar to one of our wines. And then we have our wines. And then as an example of something that I tried to find something that was similar in sugar to our 2014, I threw in this Dönhoff, which is from Nahe, which is in the Rhine.
And so one of the things that we talk about in Riesling that makes Riesling really fun is our ability to play with sugar. Mm-hmm. And if you taste these two Rieslings side by side, well, actually, I'll just ask you, which one's sweeter?
Yeah. Don't be shy. Yeah. Heather says 2014. Yeah.
Any other votes? 14?
Come on, be brave.
Yes, the 2014 sweeter.
Okay. Now, do you think it's maybe 20% sweeter or twice as sweet or 4 times as sweet or just a touch sweeter?
10, 15% sweeter.
Good. That's what it tastes like to me. But I think this is where this gets kind of fun, is this idea of a sugar acid balance. So it's actually more than twice as sweet as the 2019. So the 2014 has double the amount of sugar and then some. But the reason that you don't notice that is this idea of sugar acid balance. So one of the things that's great is when you have a really high acid wine, you can bring some more sugar to the equation because your body, you naturally balance out sugar and acid. So if you want a little bit, if you have a wine that's too acidic in Riesling, you bring a little bit more sugar to the equation and you get that unctuousness. So if you compare these to these different wines from across the world, the 2014 College Cellars Riesling is quite high in sugar. Now, that's not always the case because there are plenty of German Rieslings that come in well north of 40 grams a liter of sugar. That's not an unusual number, but just in these particular examples that you'll see that. And so the sugar content's quite a bit higher. And the reason we did that was to balance out that really high acid, was to bring in that balance of the two. So just that idea, I think the most important thing is sugar acid balance, is noting where that sits on your palate. Kind of fun. I don't know. Like salt fat balance. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so these are the things you can play off of each other. So then let's talk about alcohol and where do these fit in ethanol wise? And so again, when we bring the sugar to the equation in our Rieslings, we bring grape juice back in. So when we brought the grape juice back into the wine, we added quite a bit more grape juice. So that brings the alcohol down. So you'll notice the 2014 is quite low in alcohol. It's 10% alcohol. And why this is kind of fun is that, wines that are 10% alcohol, you can drink a whole bottle of, and it won't knock you out. Well, that's me. I'm a large person, but it allows you to consume more wine and makes it more food friendly. But just coming in at that 10% alcohol. But notice all these wines are really nice and low in alcohol. They're not particularly high, and that just has to do with when they were picked and what sugar content they were picked at, and then how much sugar you leave behind. Acid. And then pH. These are all really low.
Yeah.
pH of 3.2 is high. That's the highest. That's really low. So that means that these wines are really good at keeping. Rieslings always have really remarkably low pHs. But what's really interesting is that our pH should be a direct inverse of the acid, right? So the highest acid wine, which is the Camptal, should be the lowest pH. So this one right here should be the lowest pH. And the highest pH should be the Alsatian because it has the lowest amount of acidity. But we don't necessarily see that. This Eden Valley has an incredibly low pH. And ours should have an even lower pH. It has the most acid, but it doesn't. So it's just that idea that pH and acid aren't completely, they're related, but they're not completely perfectly corollary.
This Eden Valley here is the lowest pH wine we've actually ever recorded in the database. Lower than Champagne's. I'm actually really surprised.
Yeah, very rarely do we see a 2.
It has 10 times more acidity than a Rocks Syrah.
Has anybody tasted that 2018 Dandelion?
Yeah, the reason it's in there is because the Cab Sauv group decided to do a Riesling tasting 2 days ago. So they can fill you in on what they thought about it if we've got any of them on the line.
Is there anybody here from the Cab group? Well, that's what we get for doing something cool.
Man, that seems like
God damn it.
that seems like that was just. It seems like that.
Yeah,
just
no, I'm
ripped
from the
your
cab
tongue
group.
off.
Oh, there we go. We got someone.
Yeah,
Sounds
so
like David. Yeah,
they
there he
were
is.
all delicious. The Eden Valley one was drier than I expected it to be, but fantastic. My favorite was still the Comptal though.
Mhm.
Yeah, super minerally on the Eden Valley. I'm not sure how to taste the low pH though. I'm not really sure what that tastes like.
You can't taste pH.
Unfortunately, the TAs though will give you a pretty good indication of how sour it was overall. Yeah, the Comptal probably was kind of a wrecking ball.
Yeah, you got to be an acid lover to be. If you like a dry 8 gram a liter acid, you love the acid.
It was
Yep.
my favorite
Yeah,
of all of them. It was so good.
Yeah, that was David's wine of the flight.
David, you need to pursue sparkling winemaking.
Champagne is one of my favorite things to drink.
There we go.
It's my favorite thing to make.
Mhm.
But that's when you get into the 8s, that's bordering on sparkling wine numbers.
Yeah.
Things don't get there. Very rarely do we see that in still wines above 8. Typically reserved for sparkling.
Mhm.
But an interesting counterpoint in terms of acidity, I mean, just as a shocker, but you can see what the same acid in a fairly sweet wine tastes like in the 2014. So that's what
Yeah.
8 grams a liter of acid tastes like when you've got a bunch of sugar in the equation to cover it up. So same amount of acid, but it probably doesn't taste nearly acidic in that 2014 College Cellars because you got so much sugar that sort of covers up that higher acid. Did these taste this acidic, David, in your tasting? Did they kind of follow that in your experience?
Yeah, you definitely notice the acidity. We tried the Kunstbas after the Pfalz Riesling, which was a mistake because the Kunstbas didn't taste like anything. The Pfalz one was less noticeable because it had higher residual sugar. The acid was less noticeable. But certainly in the first two, in the Eden Valley and the Comptal, you could notice the acidity.
Mhm. Yeah, the fun thing about having the Pfalz wine in there is that some of the numbers are actually pretty similar to our Columbia Valley. Let's see if we can go back to the sugar because we got, well, the acidity is different. Like the Pfalz is higher, but I think that the sugar levels were pretty similar. I can't see what they are right now. Tim, scroll up.
Sorry, what do you want?
I want to see the sugar levels again. Yeah, so we were only a teeny bit sweeter than that Pfalz wine, but it didn't taste like that. I think our wine would probably read as more sweet to you.
And I did the sugar. The other reason we do the sugar is sugar does one other thing, is that sugar gives a wine an ability to age. It is a sink for oxygen and can hold some Balaton sulfur to it, so they can age a little bit longer. So higher sugar wines have an ability to live a little bit longer. That was kind of why I did the higher sugar, was to give it a little bit more run on as well. Tradable acidity, pH, what else we got? VA. Now, here's the one thing we've talked about before, is that for whatever reason, we make stupidly low volatile acidity wines. And they're quite low, very little vinegar in there. I bet you the Alsace at 0.45 probably was noticeable. That may have had a bit of a different, you may have noticed a bit of a different salinity in that, almost a different type of sourness or different acid in that Alsatian wine, probably from that higher volatile acidity. It's a pretty high number for a dry Riesling.
Yeah, that one, I don't know if I've had that vintage, but I've had that wine a lot, just for blind tasting, and it's really neutral. And I think that because this is a fermented dry in neutral oak, or a combination of neutral and stainless, I think that the fermentation gets a little stressed out by that. And the Alsace way of making Rieslings is a little bit more oxidative, which I think is maybe where some of that VA comes from as well. But yeah, it was not a fruity wine.
A little bit of a difference. Anyway, I guess the idea here was just to talk about the idea of primary fruit character, which is the 2019. You've got an essence of pure fruit, and then tertiary characters that come from age, and then this idea of sugar acid balance. Where you can bring some sugar into the equation to balance out the acidity. And now, to give you an idea, sparkling wines have quite a bit of sugar in them. Even though you have these dry champagnes that you think are totally, they taste totally dry, there's quite a bit of sugar in there, because not only do you have high acid, but then you've got the bubbles that get perceived as acidity. And so then you throw some sugar on top of that. And then you can throw sugar in there and you'll never even notice it's there. It just masks it because there's so much acid.
Tim, actually something that I think would be really fun to show the students right now, because the majority of the student groups are actually doing Lori as their carboy project.
Yeah.
I think it would be nice to show them the juice chemistry.
Sure.
Because we've got a few groups that are choosing to go dry, like the cab group, and the cab group also seems to be a fan of those really high acid dry styles though. So this is kind of the year for that. But then there might be some other people that want to do a little bit of sugar because they don't dig that high acid dry profile. But I think it would be nice just to see where it is and maybe talk a little bit about how high it is.
Yeah. So actually, it's going to fall right in line with. Let's go here. Log in. Let me do
the ETS.
I'm just looking for the report. Hang on. Give me a sec. I'm there. I just have to share my screen. Give me just a second. Where are you? I've got it. I just got to get the report. Viewers. There we go. All right.
Go back. Oh, you big boy.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So the high sugar in sparkling wines, is that the same for pet nats? Do pet nats also have a high sugar amount?
Pet nat is a Jesus take the wheel form of winemaking.
Okay.
And it doesn't have a codified standard of residual sugars. However, I'll say that with pet nats, the residual sugar content is pretty related to when you basically closed it up. Because you don't do a dosage, or you rarely do a dosage on those styles of wine, so it's not like you're dialing it in. With traditional method bubbles and with Charmat method things like Prosecco, you've got a decided level that you're going for. But with pet nat, it's a little bit more like closing up the bottle at a certain Brix level, letting that turn into carbon dioxide gas, and sort of it lands where it lands if you don't make a bomb. So with sparkling wines, there actually is EU regulations on what sugar levels are and what you label them as. So like if you see brut on a sparkling wine, that's between 7 and 12, or excuse me, that's extra brut, 7 and 12 grams a liter, 12 to 17 is brut, that kind of thing. So there actually is regulations, whereas pet nat's a little bit more of a Wild West.
Yeah, and pet nats, they're because they become popular, there are an increasing number of people that are getting hurt bad. Like I'm hearing reports of people blowing their hands off, losing eyes because they don't understand what they're doing. And you need to be really careful when you close up a bottle that you know exactly how much sugar is in there, because close up a bottle with, now realize that this is on so you're measuring with a hydrometer. Most of them are doing the hydrometer. You measure with a hydrometer 0.5 Brix. Now I want you to measure with a hydrometer, see how good you are at measuring 0.5 Brix. 0.5 Brix is around 20 grams a liter of sugar. 0.5 around, maybe more, maybe less, depends on the density of the wine. 20 grams a liter will make you a really nice fizzy pet nat, exactly where you want to be, 15 to 20 grams a liter. But that's the difference between 0 and 0.5 on your hydrometer. You go 0.5 to 1, somewhere in that range, you've got to 25 grams a liter. Now realize the difference between 20 grams a liter in the bottle, 20 grams a liter in the bottle will net you about 70 PSI in the bottle. You go to 25 grams a liter, so just 0.5 up, which is impossible to measure on a hydrometer, you went from 80 to 100 PSI in the bottle. You miss by another half a gram a liter, you just went up to 120 psi in the bottle, which will break the bottle and blow your fucking hand off. And it will blow your hand off. It will rip, and glass will cut loose. It'll take your fingers off. And people are doing this shit all the time because everybody thinks pet nats are cool. Pet nats are hard to make. You've got to know what you're doing. And I'm just really, we almost had a student blow her damn hand off last year because she didn't know what she was doing. She went to degorge it, blew out of the tank, blew the goddamn trash can up that she was degorging into. And, just because it's cool, you need to really know what you're doing. This is not like, don't mess around with these. Like, you really need to know some accurate measurement of how much sugar is in your wine, or you're going to make a bomb and blow your hand off. And, and I know they're cool and they're fun, but you really need to know what you're doing. So,
sparkling wines are advanced level winemaking.
Yeah.
And it's worth your money to get real sugar tests on those. Like, one of the things that I keep telling you is, you got to confirm dryness. You got to confirm dryness. Like, that's one of the things we kind of hammer into you. And the way that you do that is through actual direct measures of sugar, because you get to a point in the fermentation process where just the hydrometer does not work. And for red wines, hydrometer not working basically results in VA. For sparkling wines, hydrometer not giving you enough resolution results in little hand bombs. So, very well worth it. Pet nats are cool. Spend the money to get an ETS residual sugar check.
So to give you an idea, so based on taste, remember, Rebecca, probably most of you probably agree that the 2019 to 2014 only taste a little bit difference in sweetness, right? They're just a little bit different in sweetness. So if you were to bottle as a pet nat the 2019 Riesling and let that finish fermenting in bottle, you'd have a really nicely fizzy wine. The 2014, you close the lid on that, you blow your hand off. One of these is a nice fizzy pet nat if it re-ferments. The other one's a bomb. And not just kind of a bomb, a big bomb. Like a 170 PSI bomb that you make. And if any of you were children like me who did time for making explosive devices, you would know what we're talking about. So I had a colorful childhood. I got better. But these things go big and they can really hurt you. And I just have I'm just really happy I've made it to this point in my life with all my fingers and my eyes. So maybe I'm a little bit more conscious of that, but I just want to make sure that we're really careful on that. So I'm gonna dial
so pet nats are fine, but adult supervision required. And Tim and I are adults. It's like, barely, but we've had our 10,000 hours. So
yeah,
we can help you with that. If you're passionate about pet nat, as a lot of people are these days, we can do that, or we can tell you what to do there, but just don't go into it blind. We'd love to help you make some or give you some actual advice on how to do it properly so it's safe and delicious.
Yeah. And so I'll share the screen now and talk about what we've got in terms of acids here. So I want you to ignore this top line. Just ignore the titratable acidity, because titratable acidity in juice doesn't mean much of anything. It just means how much acid you can titrate. What we really want to look at here is the actual acids as they're added up. So we have 2.91 grams of malic in the Lori juice, and we have 6.2 grams a liter of tartaric. And so if we make this into wine, once all this other stuff gets out of the way, the buffering stuff like potassium and calcium and other stuff, you're going to have realistically somewhere in the 9 gram a liter range of acidity. It'll be higher than the Alsatian. It'll be higher than the 2014. So if you want a really racy acid, dry, Riesling, this is it. So this would come in at that 9 gram a liter range, which is pretty typical for sparkling. And then also the sugar on this means this is going to come in at about 12.5% alcohol. So 12% alcohol with 9 grams a liter of acid is really right into that kind of sparkling wine range. This is really good wine for making sparkling. Now, that being said, this could be a good candidate for a pet nat. You just would want to, bottle it at, maybe 20 grams of sugar and let it finish. The downside to that is, and let me kind of dial you back on that, is that once you close the lid and fermentation starts to build pressure, that fermentation is going to slow down really radically. So I want to advise against doing a pet nat this quarter because you won't have time to get it dry. It'll take some time until December or January for that fermentation to complete. It'll take 2 or 3 months to complete. It won't happen fast enough for you to be able to share the wine with your classmates.
However, a bunch of people have Lori juice at home as home wine projects.
Now, as a home
That
wine
could be
project, bring it in. We'll teach you how to measure sugar accurately. And if you wanted to do a home wine pet nat, you could do that with this. It would make a fabulous, fabulous pet nat. It is spec perfect for it.
Tim, do you have any advice for students who are going for a drier style, but 9 grams a liter is tooth enamel issues? Would you recommend any mallow, or would you recommend a light chemical deacidification
Well,
so that they could reach maybe 7 grams?
well,
What do
if
you
they're
think?
dead, my recommendation would actually be not to deacidify, because even that Austrian Riesling had sugar. It had 4 grams of sugar, which is above perception.
Mhm.
So my recommendation would be actually to make sure to save some juice, or we'll have some juice available, and do some finish the wine dry, and then do some juice add backs. Do juice reserve add backs, because even if you go to 4, 5, 6, 7 grams a liter sugar, which is 0.5%, you'll never notice that there's sugar there. I mean, I'd be willing to bet, David, did that Austrian Riesling in any way, shape, or form taste sweet to you?
No, it you could barely taste any sweetness in it at all. It was just bracing acidity.
Yeah. So you can I wouldn't dial back the acid. I would keep the acid high and then bring sugar. And the reason for that is your palate, the way I think of it is just like how much sonic force or flavor force can you put on your palate? Deacidifying anything, taking something away, is always going to dial flavor back. So if you can keep all the acid, keep all the flavor, and then just mute it, bring it back a little bit by adding some other complexity, adding another flavor. Your goal with wine should be always to add something else that complements it. Don't try to, only take things away if you have to. Try to mask it in a different way. So bring just a tiny bit of sugar, and I mean a tiny bit, like 4 or 5 grams a liter to this juice would give you that bracing acidity and freshness, but it wouldn't rip the enamel off your teeth. That wine, this wine going totally dry will be fairly unpleasant and fairly sour, but just a little bit of sugar will help you keep that acidity, keep that minerality, keep all that flavor that comes with the high acid, but bring just a little bit of sugar, not to the outrageous rate of the 2014, but just a dash, so that you still get that. But there's another key to the sugar. And the other piece to this equation is, I'm going to stop my share. The other piece to this equation is that it's your brain. It's all about your brain and putting your brain on drugs. And sugar's a hell of a drug. I know that, Rick James said cocaine's a hell of a drug, but sugar's a hell of a drug. It's even more addictive than cocaine. And that's empirically true. But a little bit of sugar does something. And it's a psychological twist, and you don't even know what's going on. As soon as you pour sugar on your palate, your brain goes, hey, wait, that's sugar. I like sugar. Sugar is good for me. It's a calorie. It's a thing. And it triggers dopamine receptors that say, oh, I need to do all these things, and my body's got to get engaged in different ways. So acid does one thing. It makes you salivate, which is really good. That means it's going to make you want to eat. So that's high acid. High acid's good for that. But then you throw in some sugar, and this is where it gets really cool. Is sugar just goes, oh, I like this. This is a positive thing. It's an affirmation. It gives you a high. And so a little bit of sugar, even if you can't technically tell it's there, in your conscious mind, your subconscious mind knows it. Your body will react to it. And a little bit of sugar will make you go, yum, regardless. So adding sugar to acid actually enhances the whole experience and gives you a psychological reaction that even if you can't tell it's there, you had a reaction. And so it's a dirty little trick that we can play in the wine world with just a little bit of sugar, and realize this is a tiny bit. And 4 grams a liter is nothing. 4 grams in an entire bottle is nothing. One Mountain Dew has 50 grams of sugar in it, like 48 grams in a Mountain Dew. I mean, in one can, not in a liter. it has 100 grams a liter of sugar. It's 10% sugar. It's more than that. So this is a tiny little bit. So don't think you're doing some horrible health, defect to people by giving them a tiny little, bit of sugar. That's not enough to, really move your blood sugar, but it's enough to create a psychological response. So I wouldn't deacidify. I would just work on that juice reserve to dial in that, whether it's 3, 4. And what's great about juice reserve, instead of trying to stop a ferment, trying to stop a ferment's really hard. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of other things to do that, to nail it. If you get the wine all the way dry, you can come back in and custom tailor your sugar. If you want 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5 grams a liter of sugar, you can just add the juice until you get the number just where you want it. And that gives you that extra ability to really custom build your wines. And this is a really common practice in Germany. A lot of the East Coast wineries I know that make Riesling, they all use a little bit of juice reserve to just nail that sugar just right. And it's a really, I wouldn't say a better way, but it's just a more, for the scientist who really wants to get it just right, it's a better way to do it.
And with that really high level of acidity that we have in this juice, the people who are planning on leaving some residual sugar have a much more latitude to play around. If this wine was lower in acidity, a small amount of sugar would really show, and it wouldn't show nicely. It might show as cloying. So this gives you an opportunity to have a little bit more fun because you have a broader range of sugars you can play around with and still have a balanced wine.
Cat.
Yeah, he's a bread boy.
And yeah, we'll do a lot of sparkling wine. As a matter of fact, we'll probably degorge another round. If anybody wants to come degorge with us after vintage, we'll probably do early November. We'll do some degorging and dosage. And whoever does that, I'll let you goof off with some dosage trials. And we can trial some different levels of sugar to see how that affects the sparkling. We do some, we can do it all the way brut nature where we don't add any sugar at all the way through. I think, we'll be happy to play with that. So yes, come about I guess that's like 2 weeks from now, because that'll be November. We'll have to do another round of degorging.
Yeah, so we're getting through the slog right now, but we'll be able to give you a little bit more accurate representation of what the next weeks look like pretty soon. Like for the last 2 weeks, we've been in get it done mode. So we'll actually be able to say, hey, we're going to have a few fun activities going on in 2 or 3 weeks because we'll actually be able to think that far ahead.
Well, while you're in the program, Heather, nothing. As long as you're not selling the wine.
I know we got the hookup now. I was just wondering, like, if we were a common person and we wanted to get a lab report, how much does it cost?
It depends on the thing, and you can actually see the prices on the website.
Okay.
So if you log in and you find something that you're interested in, like say if you're doing a pet nat, like residual sugar, glucose fructose is an absolute necessity. So you can take a look and see how much an individual glucose fructose would cost.
Cool.
We will also teach you how to make. We'll teach you how to do that in your second year. We'll teach you the chemistry and how to get there. So just wait a little while, young grasshopper. We'll get you there.
I need to glass pour something sort of see.
Do we need to mute Leo? Hi, Leo. What's up, dude?
Sorry, just rolled in from doing punch downs and I'm trying to catch up and then we got our wines confused. So I'm trying to figure out which one. Is the dark one the 14?
Whatever one smells like diesel's the 14.
The dark one's 14.
That's the 14.
Okay, the 14 is the dark one. Gotcha. Yeah. I thought we didn't add any sweet back to the 14, but it sure tastes sweet.
Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Was it the 15? There's one that we tried a few months ago that was like super austere but diesel-y.
Huh.
Or was the 14 the one we never released, right?
Yeah, that's the one that like caused the bills at WFS keep piling up.
Yeah, we got Sabrina,
So
we
it's delicious though, and I'm going to put this into the spring wine club shipment because I think that people are looking for something different, and this is something different.
I would prelude that as a special Christmas offering too,
Oh yeah, it's a good idea.
like a sneak preview.
What was it? So we've never done a really bone-ass dry Riesling here before because when our students who do the projects have done their tastings and they think they taste and they find a model wine, like we're honest with them. We say find a Washington wine. Like, I'm sorry, but yeah, that delicious Loimer that we had from Campdal there is not doable. But they often find Kung Fu Girl, Columbia Valley, St. Michelle, Poet's Leap, Eroica. Those all kind of end up getting into the models. And those residual sugar levels tend to range between 12 and 20 grams a liter. So almost all of our college Rieslings tend to have sugars in that level.
The only dry Riesling I've tried recently that I really like was made with Epernay too, and Tim hates that yeast. So.
Oh, is that the one that dies? Oh, or is that the one that causes the VA?
That's the VA.
Yeah, but and I don't know if the VA is there or not, but Joe out at Tempa Cellars uses it pretty exclusively, and I really do like his Riesling. They're pretty fun.
Bring in a bottle. Let's run it.
Yeah.
Let's run it.
Actually, I think we have before.
I don't know. Well, we can look. You could search your ETS for Tempest, but I don't know.
No.
Mm.
Yeah, we've had Epernay throw huge VAs on us, and I talked to a lot of the top Riesling producers in Washington. They don't use it anymore because of that.
Well, it's specifically Epernay too, and I don't know if that makes a difference, but I do know that he's often trying to finish fermenting at Christmas.
Yeah.
I know it's banned from Hogue, it's banned from Mercer, and it's banned from St. Michelle. They don't use it.
It's been blacklisted. It's a bad boy.
Something in Washington makes
was
it.
that the one that caused our grandma liter spike? Oh God, that was a bad memory.
But we won best freaking wine Riesling and.
Yeah,
Anyway.
well, that was when you deviate it. Yeah. But yes, we had we actually called the ETS microbiologist when that happened because we had clean juice, we had inoculated, and then we saw within a few days a VA spike go from nothing to a gram a liter, which is broaching on illegal. Not illegal yet, but bad tasting. And legally illegal, like labeling laws and all that. And we contacted the microbiologist at ETS, and we actually ran some tests because we're like, oh my God, something got in there. We were on a bacterial infection, blah, blah, blah. And it was 100% Saccharomyces, no bacteria, and it was just the yeast.
Huh. All right,
Yeah.
we're gonna bring a bottle in and run it.
Yay.
I've got a few.
That might be why you like it.
It's fruit, but not doesn't have the sweetness, the kind of what I think of like the cloying background. It's like a nice clean Riesling to me, but maybe it's because of the VA. Who knows?
It's not the compound, but the dosage that causes the poison.
No, and I'm the kind of guy that takes the pickle recipe and doubles the vinegar and halves the water.
There we go. That's what's going on.
Cool. Anyway, vintage has been going really well. Everything's looking good. Got some really fun wines this year. I'm really pretty happy. Only a little bit of smoke here and there. Nothing that's leaving me too freaked out. There's a little bit here and there. The Viognier that we have in Amphora is terrible. It's so bad. Everything else is okay, but if you get a chance, there's an Amphora Viognier. It's kind of backed by the pressure washer. Grab a Dixie cup and get a little shot of that. It is it's campfire. What did you say?
It's ugly. It's ugly.
I say we let it go and we market it as Ralph Fine.
How do we deal with it? Well, first off, don't put Viognier in an Amphora on skins. That might be the first thing. Just make it into white wine, because if it's not on skins, you won't get the compounds. Lesson learned. But the other thing that would happen is we can take the wine and basically break it. So we can run it through dialysis and take split it into two different streams, where we take a really clean stream which just has alcohol and a couple of aromatic compounds that are pretty small, including the smoke compounds. And then we run that through a carbon filter, strip all of those smoky compounds out, then recombine it and do that over and over and over again until the smokiness eventually drops down. So
to answer Brooke's question there, last year we didn't have a smoke issue. So we did have it actually in the amphora and then aged it in glass. But the issue with smoke wines is that just more time on skins is more problems. So last year, not a problem. This year, a problem.
yeah, this is the most intense smoke event we've ever had, was that week of just cloud toxic smoke. We've never had anything like that. So
That was only a week.
It was a lifetime, Leonard. A lifetime.
yeah, it was only 1 week. That was 1 week.
Wow.
Meanwhile, our Riesling's gonna be ice wine if we don't check that.
Well, cool. Any other questions about vintage, your whites, anything? Anything?
Oh, before we go, if people don't have questions, I'll work on getting a white wine proposal template out to you, so you remember like what things to fill in, the style decision points. So I'll work on that tomorrow, since we're out of the woods on processing right now. And you've got a winery math quiz this weekend instead of a regular quiz. So if you're around tomorrow, you're welcome to pick up a piece of paper with all the printed questions if that's your style. If not, you'll see under this week's module that there is a winery math quiz, and I have the questions just written out in a PDF form. Please answer them, fully write them out by hand, and you can submit your response either on a piece of paper on Monday, or you can send me a clean black and white PDF as well, and you can upload it to the assignment.
Oh,
And I might have missed it, you guys. So I know we have Cab and Barbera left to pick in our vineyards. Do we have anything from outside coming, Tim?
that's it. That closes us out.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
6 left.
So what's the approximate tonnage going to be this year? I mean, within a ton or two.
About 40.
Okay.
Yeah, we typically average, closer to, well, first year I was here, we did 17. And then it's been kind of ramp up until we got to about 100. But the thing is, even in 2018, when we did 100 tons, we didn't do any different in terms of lots. So we are pretty much the same number of wines, the same number of reps. But instead of having 4-ton fermentations and some 6, 7, 8 tons, I think in 2016 we had 4 harvest bins full of Merlot at one time, and then some was like 4.5. It's been we've just reduced the volume, so it hasn't been number of reps, or number of wines. It's just a smaller vintage. We're still doing 40 lots. It's just that they're smaller in tonnage, and that's partially the vintage and then partially intention, just to keep it smaller in terms of volume. And then one other thing for the fortified heads, tomorrow I'm going to press the Barbera. So sometime I would think 11-ish, 10:30, 11-ish, I'll press off the Barbera port. I had to fortify it last night. I wanted to put it on the calendar and have it go a little slower, but it went a little faster than I'd planned on. So we had to fortify it on the way out the door last night. So we'll press it tomorrow. And if you want to have a very unique aroma and flavor, opportunity sometime tomorrow, smelling and tasting the fortified is a very special smell and taste experience. It smells
It
incredible.
wafts out of the press.
Danger,
Air.
danger.
Oh yeah, Dixie cups. Thank
So-
you, Heather.
All right, I'll get Dixie cups on the way in. And cool. And then we'll rack Stony Vine Syrah and Malbec in the morning, and then I'll press some Barbera after that. Yay. Lovely to see you all for real.
Yep.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.